Good morning. This is the second edition of our series on our puppy, who is 19 weeks old, named Winston. And what we are doing in this series is working on two fronts. One is the training and growth of Winston as a puppy through adulthood and beyond. And secondly, his training to become a therapy dog and the results of that as he greets and comforts both adults and children in various locations. So, the first thing in this particular video that's important is you must establish your preferences. Even before you consider getting a puppy, you need to establish what you want to accomplish with the puppy. In Winston's case, obviously, we want a kind, loving, active, healthy puppy. Uh, we want to limit as best we can in our breeder selection um, hip dysplasia, cancer, and those kinds of aspects. As it relates to his therapy side, we want to have a calm dog, a dog that is not worried about appliances or machinery or wheelchairs, for example, or anything of that nature, and is also comfortable with children because children will be a large part of this. Nobody responds more than a child who is in crisis in some sort of health situation or what have you than a child. And that's been proven repeatedly. So, having said that, as we approached Winston, we were very, very cautious about choosing a breeder. My wife Linda went through a number of sources, double checked those sources both by their references and by other people who had raised puppies with them. We also evaluated the mother and the father as to their characteristics and how they have turned out. And we found them to be amazing in terms of fitting both sides of the profile for Winston. So we went ahead and uh, put a deposit on the first puppy. So we had pick of the litter. And what happens from that point of on is really fascinating. The breeder goes through a process of course, impregnating and creating, you know, the puppies themselves. Uh, as the puppies are born, she begins an extensive process of looking at them, watching their behavior with other puppies, how they interact with people, how they socialize, and so on, even to the point where at 8 weeks, or pardon me, at 7 weeks, she hires a temperament evaluator who comes in and evaluates all of her puppies as to their qualifications within certain parameters. And this particularly speaks to the therapy side of things. You want certain margins between 4 and 6 ratings, which determine the likelihood that the puppy can be trained and be effective as a therapy dog. Winston scored amazingly in those tests. So we went ahead, as I said, made a deposit on Winston, and our breeder was just amazing in keeping us up to date on Winston and both videos and comments that she would make and so on. And in her case, you don't pick your puppy up until 8 weeks, and you've had the 7 week temperament test, and from that, she makes a selection. And we literally drove to uh, Idaho at Boise and agreed to meet her at the airport. And the reason we drove, and this is something to carefully consider, is we felt like rather than flying over and flying back with her or him, if we drove over the night before, picked him up at 8 o'clock in the morning, which is what we did at the Boise airport, um, it would be an amazing trip home as a time to bond, as a time to become familiar with what we do and how we do it. We had his crate in the back of the car open for him. We had a blanket, of course. We had water, food. We also brought a imitation grass pad, which is how we intended to train Winston for potty training. And in that trip, everything that we hoped for really proved to take place. We got home late Friday afternoon. Of course, he was exhausted. He had another meal, went into his crate, and literally slept the whole night. Got up in the morning, and we started the potty training sequence. And he's just learned so fast and become so proficient in so many things. Don't even think for a minute that he isn't still a puppy and that he doesn't go 100 miles an hour and he doesn't chew everything and then come up and literally dies in a pile right on our laps. And he is much better being with us than he is being with just one of us. When the two of us are home, you can really tell that he's totally at peace, and we find that endearing. So, having said that, we want you to consider these aspects as you approach a puppy. We're committed here in this series to try and establish the kinds of relationships and the kinds of training principles that will give everybody a chance to both raise a happy, gorgeous puppy, something you'll enjoy 24/7, and also to be able to deal with the therapy side. And our hope is that the more people that watch this and follow it, the better it will be for everyone. It'll be a win-win for patients. It'll be a win-win for the owners of the puppies, and it'll be a win-win for the puppies for sure. So, as we always do, I want to end with one thing. In this particular video, as we do with always, we want to be certain that those of you who are considering a puppy realize what's involved and make a commitment from your heart. Getting a puppy at first is, obviously, you've got to be willing to exercise them. You've got to be willing to play with them. You got to be willing to put up with them every once in a while, making a mistake somewhere or what have you. And you need to deal with those accordingly. And we believe that since Goldens are so treat oriented, it makes it just super easy, not only to train on the basics, but also to correct any bad behaviors that you want. Having said that, our concern is that a lot of people make a decision to get a puppy based on the joy and fun and everything else that occurs in the early and middle years. But what you also have to do is make a commitment, please make a commitment that in the latter years, you're going to face some decisions that are extremely difficult. And you have to watch their health. You have to look into their eyes and see if they're still happy, if they're alert, if they're able to eat, and so on. And it may come to a point where you have to make a tough decision in terms of putting your once young puppy down. We only want people who make that decision with a commitment from their heart. The people who decide towards the latter stage that they can't afford the treatment or they don't want to have to do with the pain and suffering that's taking place and so on, those aren't the people that this is addressed to, and those aren't the people who should have puppies. So we'll be doing another one of these here within a week or so. This one is coming from downtown Seattle aboard a boat. As we promised, we enjoy bringing you new locations, and we'll try and do better at that at each different broadcast. Have a great day, be well, and if you have a puppy now, enjoy. Thank you for listening.